Hello everyone, my name is Protesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video, I want to show you how to organize your Emacs configuration file. And there are basically two ways to go about it. One is to continue using the init.el the way you do, but to add an outline to it, and we will see what that means concretely. And the other approach, which is a bit more involved, but also more flexible and powerful, is to convert your init.el into an org file and then use the org file to generate the init.el. And we will see this in practice. Let's start with the more basic approach, which is that of adding an outline to your file. What I have here, just so that we are on the same page, is just an init.el. This is actually a configuration that I wrote about a few weeks ago. You can see the link I have there. I will also include this link and maybe others in the description of this video. And what you will notice, you might notice, is these comments over here that have three or more delimiters. By default, in Emacs Lisp, a comment starts with two delimiters, as we see here, to signify a comment that is on its own line. And if you see something like this, this is an inline comment. So it is a comment that goes after some code. It doesn't comment out the code, it just annotates the code. So this is the convention in Emacs Lisp. Two delimiters, two semicolons here to say that it's on a line, and one to say that it is in line. It's an annotation. When we have three semicolons or more, it means that this is now an outline heading. And the way it works is that 3 means this is a level 1 heading, and 4 would be level 2, and so on. Let's see this in practice. What does it mean for something to be part of the outline? It means that if we do Emacs outline minor mode, it means that we can fold this heading just like that. So that's one way to go about it. And depending on the configuration, you can also change the style of those to look like headings. Depending on your theme, they will look like the headings that org mode or markdown mode have. And this is the idea. So just like this, you can get folding in basically any programming file that has the outline regexp set up, which is something that every major mode should handle. And basically, you can then contract and expand the headings. You will notice that the way it actually works, it also expands and contracts the top level forms. So you see something like the when here, I can expand it and I can contract it again. And this is the idea. And there are different key bindings for the outline. You can explore those at your own pace. You can do MX outline, and let's say there is the cycle, there is the demote, promote, go to the next, go to the previous, show all. You get the idea. There are some key bindings here, which of course are not designed for anybody to actually use, but you can use some thing more convenient if you rely on outline minor mode. I will include the configuration I use, so that you can get up to speed with the basics, but of course you can always explore more. And this is basically outline minor mode. There is, however, another way to benefit from the outline, even without using outline minor mode. So I am disabling this now, and you will notice that everything has been expanded again. So there is no headings anymore to speak of. I will now use the consult package, which is not built into Emacs, but is one of the best modern packages of Emacs. So we want to do consult and then outline. It is not bound to any key by default, but you can bind it to a key of your preference. And the idea with this is that in any major mode that has the outline regex, which should cover most major modes, you can now jump directly to one of the elements of the outline. And of course, you see how this is. This is not a line by line search tool. You will notice that it is, for example, line 8 and then line 10. So it will only go to the top level entries. Depending on your file, this will be more or less useful, but it's something I personally use a lot to quickly navigate any file of any length. It doesn't really matter. And the upside of Consult, which I have talked about in previous videos, is that it also has a preview mechanism. So as you move up and down in the mini buffer, you see the lower part of the screen, the upper part will be updated to show you the context, to show you what it is you are about to visit, what it is that you are matching in the mini buffer. And I think this is a very nice feature to have. It is user friendly. It helps with navigating a file you are not really familiar with. So you don't have to jump and check and then jump again and check. You just do it like this. This is the idea with the outline in general. It is very nice. I use it in all my Emacs Lisp packages. It's a very powerful feature, but I think it is somewhat limited in its application. It cannot do many more things that you would like to do with your personal configuration file. And this is why I personally configure my Emacs using org mode. So I want to show you how you can do the same. We will take the init.tel and convert it into an org file and then use the power of org to then manage our configuration. We will see this together. So what I will do is I will copy the contents of this buffer. And now I will kill this buffer and I will rename this file to old init.el. Okay? So now I will go ahead and create a new org file. It doesn't matter what you name the file. What matters is that you give it something that makes sense to you. So I will just call it my new init.org. Okay? It can be anything that you want. So I will do that. And now I have my new org file. And what I want to do here is I want to invoke the org command to create a source block. Of course, you can do this with a key binding, but I will do Emacs org insert structure template. And we see here, this is the name of the command, org insert structure template. And the key binding is Control C, Control comma. So I will hit that, and now it gives me the option to select among my pre-configured templates. In my case, because I have modified the templates, I see something different than what you will see if you have not made any such modifications. But you will definitely have the S template, which is for the source block. So I will type S, and this will insert the begin SRC and the end SRC lines. And between those lines, we want to include the contents of our init file. But before we do that, let's add Emacs-Lisp so that we tell org what the language is here. And now we will paste the contents of the init file just like that. So I have this, and let me save this. I have successfully saved my org file. I have included a code block with the contents of my init.el. Now, what I want to do is I want to arrange for org to so-called tangle the contents of my code blocks to another file. In other words, I want, when I tell it, to take the code blocks and the code blocks only and put them in the file that I will specify. There are three ways to do this. You can do this on a per code block basis, on a per heading basis, and on a file-wide basis. And actually about the headings also support inheritance. So you could have it, the parent heading, pass on the configuration to its children, and so on. But this is the idea. For our purposes here, I will just show you the file-wide configuration because this is the simple approach. But I will also show you what I do, which is a pair code block configuration. Let's go with the file-wide configuration. We want at the top of the org file, somewhere at the top, it doesn't have to be absolutely at the top of the first line, we want to create a property. And this will be a definition of the header arguments that we pass to all the code blocks. And we want all our code blocks to tangle, this is the technical term of associating code blocks with an output file. We want them to tangle to the init.el. This is the idea. So let me save this. And let me just make sure that org has read the property by doing Emacs org mode restart. This is the idea. And now I can trust that org has read my property, and so my code blocks have the header arguments I have specified. Let's put this to the test. I will do now Emacs org babel tangle. And I want to show you the key binding for this. Control C, Control V, and the letter T. Actually, there is another key binding, which is what I use, which is Control C, Control V, Control T. Control C, Control V is the prefix for all the Babel related commands, and V is if you pronounced Babel the way you would in Greek as Vavel, and thus V would make perfect sense. So anyway, let's do this. Org babel tangle. In other words, take the code blocks, and put it in the associated files. So I do that, and I see tangled one code block from the file that I am now in. So let me go to the DRED buffer over here, and I see that indeed there is an init.el and there is also an old init.el. Let me compare the two and see what the results look like. mx edif-files. And this asks me for files. I will first select the old init, and then I will select the current, the new init. And let's see what we have over here. There are no differences. Actually, there is a new line difference at the end because I trimmed it in the org file. But basically, there is no substantive difference. So we can abort edif in confidence that what org did for us was to create a file that preserves what we had in our old init file. I can thus go ahead and delete the old init. I am sure that things work right now. Let me also delete this init actually, and let me come here and hit the key binding and confirm that indeed it works, okay? So let's go to our org file, and let's now start using org the way it is meant to be used. In other words, let's have our headings and subheadings and prose and code all together. Let's do this with one example here. So I will create a heading here, and the idea with this heading is for me to explain those uh, lines, this part of my configuration. So of course I don't have to explain it in detail, but the idea is put the custom UI code in a separate file. Okay, and for now I will do this manually, but then I will show you something else. So I am now copying this manually, and I will come here and I will create a code block. Now I am using the key binding, and here I will just paste what I have. Okay, and now I can explain what this is about. I want to explain this for myself, if not for other people. Of course, because I am using org, I can export to HTML and thus share my work with the world, and others will benefit from my efforts to document what I have. So you can do this, and because this is org, you can have headings and subheadings. But before we continue, let me just add some more text here. Okay, let's go and delete this init.el, or actually, let's call it old init.el again. So old init.el. Okay, so we have it over here, but let me kill it. Let's go to the org file, and I want to tangle again. You will notice that now I don't have one code block anymore. I have two. But let's see what org will do with the separate code blocks. So I will tangle, I will do it with the key binding, and it's telling me that it has now tangled two code blocks. So let's see, what did it do? It has created an init file. I will visit this file. Uh, Prima facie, it looks fine. Let's go ahead and do an ediff as we did earlier. So I will do the old init compared to the new init. And indeed, I see the change. Of course, you may notice that there is a rearrangement, and this is because I actually did that rearrangement in the file. So let's go and fix this. Let's go to the init here. You see, I left this here. So I can put this as the first line over here. So let's have it like this. And now let's tangle again and see what happens. Three code blocks have been tangled. And let's go and do our ediff. And we want the old with the new. And now we see that things are looking good. There is a small change with an extra line over there, but this doesn't matter. For us, what matters is the substantive part, which is exactly intact, and this is fantastic. So let's abort here. By the way, I did a video some time ago about ediff, and I encourage you to watch that video because I also show the minimum required configuration to make it intuitive by default, because I think ediff out of the box violates the principle of least surprise. It's not intuitive at all. But not to run off on a tangent. Let's go back to our org file over here. We saw that now we can create all those code blocks with headings and the text in between. And when we tangle, we still get the same code. So this is great news because now we can break it down into as many small bits as we need and explain each of those. However, we don't want to just copy paste manually. That's kind of a lot of work, like what I did earlier, right? Copy paste it and create a code block out of it and then document it. What we can do is we can go in the code block and we can do the command which will demarcate the code blocks. So let me do mx org and demarcate, and we see here the org babel demarcate block. Control C, Control V, and D. However, again, as with before, there is Control C, Control V, Control D, okay? And the idea here is that org will see where your cursor is and it will introduce a demarcation line such that what once was a singular code block will be split into two code blocks of the same type. So this is an SRC code block of the Emacs Lisp language. You will have two of that type. Let's do this then. And just like that, you see that I have the new code block here and the old code block over there. And actually, I didn't notice, I wasn't actually paying attention to the contents, but since these make sense together, let's have them together. And let's say that here I want to set up the package manager. And then below other things, of course, I don't need to cover everything, okay? But you get the idea. This approach doesn't preclude the use of outline minor mode. You can still keep those comments here, those special outline entries, and still benefit from them when you visit the source file, sorry, the tangled file. So you can benefit from this while still using org, okay? the final thing with org, of course, org, you can use it to fold headings and stuff like this. The final thing with org, which I personally like, it's not necessary, but I think it's a good configuration, is I will add it here, startup. It's a nice setting. Startup content indent. And I will show you what this does. It's basically a way of how should the org file look when you open it. And we will see this together. But before I do this, let me add some headings below this. So let's create a demarcation here. And let's do headings level 2 here. So the custom file. Okay, it doesn't really matter what I am doing now. Okay, and load the custom file. Okay, but I just want to have some text. You will notice now that everything here is flat, okay? Everything is on the same level of indentation and everything is expanded by default, which is fine now because it's a small file, but as the file grows, this is kind of busy. It's a bit awkward to use. It is unwieldy. So we will see what this startup content indent does. Let me kill this buffer. And now let's visit the file and see what happens. You see that by default, the headings are contracted, and content here means show me all the headings, but only the headings, not their contents, okay? This is the idea. And indent means I want you, based on the level of the heading, to create the commensurate indentation, virtual indentation. This is not actual modification of the underlying file. It won't insert any kind of padding. This is just visual, just for you to be able to see it over here. And you see how the text starts somewhere further in relative to what we have over here. Okay, we see it just like that. And I think this is very nice when you are working with a large org file. And this is the idea, folks. I don't need to belabor the point. Of course, you know org. This is not the point here of this video. Let me close by just showing you the option of, instead of tangling to a file-wide destination, you can tangle on a pair code block basis, which is what I do. And I talked more about that in another video. I will link to that as well. So let me go to my .emacs, and of course, this is a massive file. We can see in the echo area at the bottom of my screen the details. This is almost 18,000 lines, more than 100,000 words. You get the idea. This is really large. But because of the features of org, because of the consult outline and all these other things, I can make perfect sense of this. Now, let's go to the point, actually, of the consult outline here. Let's go to the early init, for example. And it doesn't matter exactly what I am showing you now. What matters is the tangle on a pair code block basis. You see over here, I have the tangle target for the early init.el. And by the way, I forgot to mention that this here is a relative file system path. So this will tangle relative to where your org file is, but you can, of course, add an absolute file system path. So here, for example, it adds to the early init.el. Let's see something about the mini buffer. Actually, let me go to consult. So let's see what we have over here. And this goes here. You see, again, a relative file system path. So in my case, I prefer to tangle to many files because then I can share those files individually. For me, it makes more sense to have the best of both worlds, a modular configuration, but also a one-stop shop in terms of organizing everything. So that's all, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. If you are watching this on the video hosting platform, I will include a link in the description that will point to the publication of this video on my website, and there will be all the relevant resources and links that I mentioned in this video. Thank you very much for your attention. Take care and goodbye for now. And I need to find OBS here. So bye bye, folks.